social media is controlled by AIs. What happens if you increasingly switch control to the AIs? They are the ones making the decisions.
But that would be the end of democracy.
Right.
The Pioneer Briefing, the interview. Today with Yuval Noah Harari. The Israeli historian is a global star among thought leaders. His analysis, inspiring. His visions, thought-provoking. He has sold over 45 million books worldwide.
If AI takes over, this is bad news for human democrats and also for the human dictators. In both cases, it's the humans who lose to the AIs.
Today, we are talking about truth and how it is constructed, about information that shapes and distorts our lives. And we are looking into the future of our society, where humans might lose control. Your feeling today is more on the negative side. That's what my impression is.
Again, it's not a prophecy or a prediction. It's just a warning that if things go wrong this time, it might be worse than previous times, because previously we always had the option to correct afterwards. Now, for the first time, there is something on the planet which is not human, which is not even organic, and we cannot just press a switch and stop them.
Recorded live on the Medienship The Pioneer Two. Welcome on board. A very warm welcome to Mr. Professor Yuval Noah Harari.
Thank you. Thank you for the invitation.
You are here on a highly advanced media ship, 100% electric, plenty of intelligence, Mr. Professor, but no artificial intelligence, I promise you. So you are in a safe space here. Do you feel comfortable?
Yeah, very much so.
You just have gone through a horrible time. I can imagine writing this book, kind of nightmare. Quote, what we are talking about is probably the end of human history. Not the end of history, but the end of its human-dominated part. Please explain.
Well, we are just creating a new type of highly intelligent agent. Or not just one agent, but millions and even billions of agents.
The computer.
The AIs, yes, the computers, which will increasingly make key decisions about us, about the world. You apply to a bank to get a loan. It's an AI deciding whether to give you a loan. You apply to university to get a place. It's an AI making the decision. AIs are making decisions in the military about what to bomb. AIs are not just making decisions, they are also inventing and creating. Previously, humans live inside culture. We live inside a world made of cultural artifacts. This boat, this microphone, the language we speak, the stories, the music, the poems, the financial devices, the political ideologies, all these things over thousands of years, they came from the human imagination. Now, for the first time, there is something on the planet which is not human, which is not even organic, that can create such things, can create music and art, can come up with new scientific theories, can come up with new political ideas, new religious ideas. Before you rush to judge it, is it good? Is it bad? Will it destroy us? Will it save us? We just need to stop and reflect on what does it mean that after tens of thousands of years of living inside a human culture, we will increasingly find ourselves living in a hybrid culture, or an even alien culture, again, in which all the cultural artifacts surrounding us, from physical objects to ideas, they come from an inorganic intelligence.
Which we have created.
Which we are now creating, but which we cannot control and predict. The very definition of AI is something that can learn and change by itself. If it cannot learn and change by itself, if it only does what you instructed it, what you predict, then it's not really an AI, it's just an automatic machine. I mean, automatic machines have been around for quite a long time. We have washing machines and we have coffee machines and all these things. These are not AIs because they only do what we instructed them to do. It becomes an AI only when it starts to learn and change and invent things by itself. So again, by definition, we cannot predict how it will develop and what it will do.
What they call us is that there is always a man in the loop, that we always have, like automated drive, for example, that we always have the capacity and even the will to stop it if we think we should stop it. But you don't believe in this promise of the giant in the internet economy that we can stop it?
No, I mean, it's... First of all, we are only in the beginning of this AI revolution. I mean, AI is more or less 10 years old. It's only 10 years since we really began to see the first consequential AIs. The idea was around for decades earlier. But, and this is just the first tiny baby steps. And the development of AI will continue for decades, centuries, even millions of years. And this is really the AIs we are familiar with today, like ChatGPT and GPT-4 and all these things. They are the most primitive AIs. And already they changed the world, and we cannot just, press a switch and stop them.
Give us an example.
If social media is the best example. Social media is controlled by AIs. And very primitive AIs, but AIs. Previously, the news industry, the flow of information in the world, it was controlled by humans. Some of the most important humans in the world were the news editors, the editors of the New York Times or CNN or whatever. If you think about the great figures of modern politics, many of them were newspaper editors. Lenin, before he was dictator of the Soviet Union, he was editor of Iskra newspaper. Mussolini started as a socialist journalist, then he became editor of a fascist newspaper, the Avanti, and then he was dictator. So this was the ladder of promotion: journalist, editor, dictator.
So a powerful profession.
Very powerful profession. Who are the most powerful editors today in the world? What are their names? They have no names because they are algorithms. Who edits the newsfeed of Facebook? Who decide what will be the next video on TikTok? Algorithms, AIs.
The customer will decide. That's what Mark Zuckerberg is telling the Senate when he was asked for that. The customer makes this decision, not we. We are not politicians. It's not Mark Zuckerberg who is the editor. It's the algorithm created by Mark Zuckerberg that makes decisions that many times Mark Zuckerberg doesn't anticipate and doesn't even maybe understand. But give us the example of the Bible. Give us a glimpse what you think about the Bible becoming a transformation in the new digital age.
Yeah, so if you think about religions of the book, like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, they give authority to a text. The Bible, the Quran, the interpretations of the Bible. The problem they had for thousands of years is that the text cannot actually speak to you. You can read it, but you can interpret its words in different ways, and you don't know what is the right interpretation, what is the right answer. And so you establish a human institution to interpret the text. And the real power is not in the text, it's in the people interpreting the text. Now you have technologies for the text to speak to you and to interpret itself. Again, if you think about Judaism, for instance, so no Jewish rabbi was ever able to read all the texts of Judaism. They can read the Bible, the Mishnah, the Talmud, but they can't read everything written by every single rabbi for 2,000 years. Now you have an AI that can read all of that and can find patterns and interpretations that no human rabbi, no human being ever came up with because maybe the patterns are just too intricate, too complicated. And what will happen to religions of the book, to religions that think that certain texts are sacred, when you have texts that can talk to you? That you can say, this is that can tell you how to interpret them. So I don't know what the answer will be.
So I can ask the Bible, what should I do in this particular situation with my boyfriend, with my girlfriend, with my parents, with my job? I can ask the Bible, and the Bible is kind of a digital tool, a partner, a
you
lover.
Don't need a human rabbi or a human priest to tell you what the Bible says. You can have the text talk directly to you. And I don't know what the Pope will think about it, or what the chief rabbis would think about it. But we have, for the first time in history, especially for people who think the texts are sacred, this new situation when the text can actually talk to you.
But you created a lot of sentences which are more on the negative side. Silicon chips, I give you a flavor. Silicon chips can create spies that never sleep, and despots that never die.
Yeah.
That's what I would call a dystopia.
Yeah, but again, it emphasizes, I don't say that this is inevitable. I mean, this is just a possibility. It depends on the decisions we make.
That's the out-of-control AI.
It's not just out of control, it enables new things in the world, in human reality. I mean, previously, even totalitarian regimes that wanted to follow everybody all the time, like you think about the Stasi in East Germany. So they really wanted to follow every single citizen of East Germany 24 hours a day, but they couldn't. Because to follow everybody all the time, you need two things. First of all, you need a lot of agents. Not just one agent to follow each person, you need 2 or 3 agents, because even Stasi agents, they need to sleep sometime. So you need a couple of shifts to follow each citizen 24 hours a day. And then let's say you have enough agents. At the end of the day, they just write paper reports, send it to Stasi headquarters in East Berlin. Then somebody needs to analyze it. And they just didn't have enough analysts. A lot of reports about East German citizens, they just gathered dust in Stasi headquarters because there weren't enough analysts to make sense of it, of all the information. Now, with AI, you can create the first total surveillance regime in history that will completely annihilate privacy. You don't need human agents to follow people around. You have AI agents, you have smartphones and drones and cameras and microphones everywhere. And even more importantly, you don't need human analysts to make sense of the ocean of information. We also have choice today, but we need to be aware that there are new items on the menu that just didn't exist before.
On the other side, Professor Harari, people judge the world around them not just by what people say and what the internet is saying, they judge it by hard facts. They have their kind of truth. Are you better off than 4 years ago? That's a typical question in an election campaign. What do you think about the real world speaking to us?
There are facts in the world, but it is becoming more and more difficult to get to them. Because we live in a kind of more and more dense information environment, constantly kind of bombarded. Like, we don't see the reality. We see and hear and even feel the stories about the reality. This is something that, of course, is very old, that humans never experienced reality as it is. They always, also in the time of the Bible, they experienced the story about the reality. Like, I don't know, if the Babylonians come and destroy Jerusalem and destroy the temple, and people don't lose faith in God because there is a story that actually this is proof that God exists and controls the world because he sent the Babylonians to punish us. So you would have thought that what harder fact can there be to kind of make people disillusioned with their religion than the fact that the temple of the god was destroyed. But then you have these very sophisticated storytellers that tell you, the fact that the temple of the god was destroyed by the Babylonians is proof of how powerful this god is, that he controls even the Babylonians who he sent them to destroy his temple.
What you literally say is that information, which is part of our business as journalists to deliver information, what you say is that information is not truth.
Information is absolutely not truth. Most information is fiction and fantasy and propaganda and lies. And the truth is a very small subset of information. Why? Because the truth tends to be, first of all, costly. If you want to produce a truthful account of anything, you need to invest time, money, effort in research, fact-checking, analysis. Fiction is very cheap.
But then you give a downgrade to the human being. You say that he or she cannot judge reality because she is depending on storytellers.
We depend on institutions. I mean, the idea that I can just go by myself as a single individual and discover the truth about the world, this is a fantasy, and this is very dangerous fantasy because it erodes trust in institutions. At least democracies cannot exist without trustworthy institutions. When you destroy all trust in institutions, the only choice left is anarchy or dictatorship. Dictatorship doesn't need trustworthy institutions because dictatorship works on terror. There are many people who attack institutions and think they are liberating people. In fact, they are paving the way to a dictatorship. If you think about science, for instance, so as a scientist, it's very clear to me that science is a team sport. It's not something that an individual can do by themselves. Not Einstein, not Darwin, not historians like myself. Like, how do I know what happened in the ancient world? Like how the Bible was created? I can't do it by myself. I have to rely on the research of dozens and hundreds of other scientists, archaeologists who conduct excavations and find ancient inscriptions, and philologists who can read these ancient inscriptions, and experts in Roman history, in Greek history, in Babylonian history, and so forth. I can't do that by myself. And it's the same with every other areas of research. I obviously don't celebrate them in the sense of saying they are good systems or they are ethical systems. It's more a warning. People have this.
You said they are effective.
Yes,
and I would say they are not effective where they are. We are here in the middle of Stalinism, and it's gone.
I mean, they are. I'm afraid I'm against the complacency of people thinking that Stalinism or Nazism, they are so defective that they just collapsed under the weight of their own errors and misconceptions. And this is not the case. They were terrible systems that created immense harm to people, but in terms of military and political power and also economic power, they are extremely effective power that got very, very close to taking over the world. And this complacency that, we don't have to do anything against these kinds of systems arising again in the 21st century because they are defective, this is the dangerous way of thinking. No, they are, again, obviously in ethical terms, they are some of the most horrendous systems ever created. But don't underestimate their political and military power, because power in human society, it doesn't come from knowing the truth. It comes from making a lot of people cooperate on a project. And Stalinism and Nazism were extremely effective in making tens of millions, hundreds of millions of people work together to build an industry, to build an army. And these were some of the most, again, powerful industries and armies in the world.
But let's have a closer look at communism in the east part of Germany. At the end, there was not a single shot fired, and they were broken inside. There was no army needed. Second World War is quite a different thing. We needed the US, and we needed all the other armies from all over the world. But in this case, the system was broken, even if they were big storytellers. They had their own newspapers, their TV channels, and they were telling the people that we are on the rise and that communism is the final goal of mankind. But this kind of storytelling at the end doesn't work, and the system was crashed from inside with a kind of human intelligence.
I mean, three things to say about it. First of all, we were lucky with some of the leadership of the communist bloc that they were willing to go peacefully. If you look at something like Maduro in Venezuela or like Milosevic in Serbia, if you had Maduro in the Kremlin in the 1980s, it could have ended much, much worse. It was ultimately a choice. They could have chosen to try and use power, to use force to stay in power. The other thing to notice is that it took a long time. And there were times in the late 40s, in the 1950s, that they had a chance of actually taking over the world. It was touch and go to some extent that they ultimately failed. And the third thing to notice is that what really defeated communism in the 20th century was its economic dysfunction over the long term. And its economic dysfunction resulted from the inefficiency of an over-centralized economy. And this was just extremely inefficient. Now, in the 21st century, we have AI. But if you replace humans with AI, AI can do it. You flood humans with information, they become overwhelmed. You flood AI with information, it becomes more efficient. And this is an open question.
But let's have a look at the maybe positive sides of all this in the democracy. Now everybody has the access to media, for example.
Yeah.
Since this revolution, social media revolution, computer revolution, internet revolution, we have access for everybody. So citizen journalism has become not just a topic for activists, but it has to come to the real world. Politicians are challenged now because people can fact check in a second, because this AI is supporting democracy as well.
Yeah.
So what do you think about these that we see a kind of democratization of democracy?
As I said, it has both immense positive and immense negative potential. Also, when it comes to democracy, at present, the bottom line is not good.
Why?
I mean, just a fact. You look at the world in 2024, you see that all over the world, democracies are destabilizing, even collapsing. Democracy, in essence, is a conversation. And what you see is that the conversation is collapsing, that people are unable to hold a rational conversation. They are unable to listen to each other any longer. We can have a long discussion about why it is happening, but I think it's one of the last facts in the world that almost everybody can agree on. Like Democrats and Republicans in the US, they cannot agree on anything except that the conversation is collapsing. So something is definitely wrong.
I'm not convinced, Mr. Harari. If you compare this kind of conversation we have today about everything is questioned. Everything is in fire. And if you compare this with 100 years before, when all the publishers in Europe would fit into this room, the powerful people in the media business were in Germany maybe 10, maybe in Europe 50, not more. And now everybody can participate in this great conversation. That's democracy.
We are measuring different things. You're measuring participation. I'm measuring the ability to reach any kind of agreement. Conversations need both. If everybody participates in a shouting match, nobody listens to the other, and there is no way to reach a decision, this is not a democracy, this is just anarchy. Of course, we need to expand the circle of participation, that's very important. But if we cannot reach any agreement, then again, the choice left is anarchy or dictatorship. Anarchy is not democracy.
But minorities, for example, they are able today to address their view to the world. They are also they are possible. It's possible for them to push forward their interests, and they become real politics. We have maybe the most liberal society in Europe than ever before, if it comes to minorities, because this minority for the first time have a voice.
Yes, I mean, this is a very good thing, but it's not enough. The question is, if everybody have a voice, but the system collapses, then this is not a good result.
Why should it collapse? Why should it collapse?
Let's see what happens in November in the US. I mean, in my country, democracy is collapsing in Israel. And when I talk about collapse, let's be more specific about what it means. It means that every election feels like a war. In a democracy, you have political rivals. But if you think that the other side is not just your political rival, they are our enemies, they are trying to destroy us. If they win, they will destroy us. Therefore, every election is a war. We should do anything legal or illegal to win the elections. If we win the elections, we only take care of our tribe. If we lose the elections, we don't accept the result. We don't accept the verdict. This is a situation in which democracy cannot function. It can last like this 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, but then you have a choice: split the country, have a civil war, or establish a dictatorship. It's not hopeless, but we need to build on this technology, but not to leave it to its own devices, because measuring all human emotions by the single metric of engagement is just a terrible, terrible mistake. From the viewpoint of user engagement, 1 hour of hate is better than 30 minutes of rationality and calmness. It's better than 30 minutes of sleep. And for the algorithms have a very, very shallow and narrow view of human nature. They only care about engagement. Now, what we've learned over thousands of years of history is that humans have a wide range of emotions and abilities. They have vices, they have virtues. And to build a good society, we need to invest effort and to build institutions that encourage human virtues at the expense of human vices.
We have to be skeptical, I agree, but we also have to be skeptical about our opinions at the first place. Think about the first machine age. Now we are living in the second machine age, like your colleagues from the MIT have written in their famous book. But in the first machine age, when the steel factories, the car factories, everything came up, mankind was also afraid. And we leveraged our muscle power. Now we are going to leverage our brain power. And people were afraid in the first place, in the first machine age, for a good reason, you say, but we came over it. We made it better. We built unions and so on.
I mean, if you think about the first machine age and you only look at the beginning and at the end, things look wonderful. Like you look at living conditions in 1800, you look at living conditions in 2000, everything got better. And that's true. But the way there was a roller coaster because during the first machine age, people just didn't know how to build a benign industrial society. So they experimented, and some of these experiments were terrible. One experiment was modern imperialism, with terrible consequences for hundreds of millions of people.
And communism came up.
Then communism and fascism were more experiments in how to build...
But this roller coaster, I would call it life. That's a life experience, a real life experience when new things came up, and we are pioneers here. So the second machine age we have to be skeptical, but we also have to measure it by the chances it gives to democracy, to society, but also to the well-being of our economies.
Yeah, but we need to do our best to avoid a repeat of what happened in the first machine age. If we have to go through another cycle of another wave of imperialism, another wave of totalitarianism, another round of world wars in order to learn how to build AI-based societies. This will be very bad news for billions of people. So again, it's a warning, it's a danger, it's not a prophecy, it's not inevitable. It all depends on the decisions we do in the coming years. But the kind of weight of these decisions is bigger than previously in history because of the new nature of the technology that we are creating.
Thank you, Mr. Harari, for this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.